We're going to play some marches for you to precede the program. That last one was called Allied Honor by Carl King. Excuse me. The next one we're going to play is a Sousa march called the Gala Seventh. It's one of my favorites. I hope you like it too. Our next march is another Sousa march. It's entitled, that's not what it's titled. It's entitled The Invincible Eagle. we're going to play is called Blackjack. And it's by a man named Fred Harper. We just started using it about a year ago, and at least in my recollection, it's working well. And it's kind of become a staple for us. We use it on the march. In fact, I think we played it last spring at the square. But we're going to use it again today, and we hope you like it too. Drum major and warrant officer during World War II and right after World War II. Mrs. Little, would you stand so we can say hello to you? Another person out in the audience, I understand, is John Jackson. And First Sergeant Jackson was the first sergeant of this band, and he joined this band, I'm told, 73 years ago. Now we're going to play a march by a man named J.J. Richards called The Emblem of Unity. favorite. El Capitan. I'm not sure why I like it so much, but I do know that one thing I do like about it is the way it starts out at 6/8 and then ends up in 2/4 time. And that the trio, that's where it changes a whole new feel. Originally, this was taken from a operetta called The Cat. And the march from it was so popular that Caesar decided to go ahead and just write the march itself and use it with this thing. So here is El Capitan.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 34th Army Band, under the direction of Commander Jim Goodwin, First Sergeant Greg Hancock. Good morning and welcome. My name is Don Samuelson. I'm retired First Sergeant of this wonderful organization. And it will be my pleasure to be your host this morning. The importance of this day, the day we honor veterans from all wars, cannot be minimized. For you see, without the sacrifices of these soldiers, we would not be able to assemble as a free society without fear of oppression. Even today, we gather in this auditorium feeling secure that some terrorist bomb will not explode here because many from our own state are fighting in Iraq. I would like to begin by reading you an article that describes the people we are honoring today. It is called, "What is a Veteran?" Some veterans bear visible signs of their service: a missing limb, a jagged scar, a certain look in their eye. Others may carry the evidence inside them: a pin holding a bone together, a piece of shrapnel in the leg, or perhaps some inner demon. Except in the infrequent parades, however, men and women who have kept America safe wear no badges or emblems. You can't tell just by looking. What is a vet? He is the cop on the beat who spent 6 months in Saudi Arabia sweating 2 gallons a day, making sure all the armored vehicles in his unit didn't run out of fuel. He is the barroom loudmouth, dumber than 5 wooden planks, whose overgrown frat boy behavior is outweighed by 1,000 times on a cosmic scale by his 4 hours exquisite bravery near the 38th parallel. She is the nurse who fought against daily futility and went to sleep sobbing every day and night for 2 solid years in Da Nang. He is the POW who went away one person and came back another. He is the Paris Island drill instructor who has never seen combat, but has saved countless of lives by turning sloppy, no-account rednecks and inner-city gang members into U.S. Marines, all the while teaching them to take care of each other and complete the mission. He is the old man in the parade who pins his ribbons and medals on his Legionnaire's uniform with a prosthetic hand. He is the plumber who was a career quartermaster who watched the ribbons and medals pass him by. He is one of the anonymous heroes in the Tomb of the Unknowns whose presence in Arlington National Cemetery must forever preserve the memory of all anonymous heroes whose valor died unrecognized with them on some faraway battlefield or in the ocean's sunless deep. He is the old guy bagging groceries at the supermarket, palsied now and slow, who helped liberate a Nazi death camp or pulled burned soldiers from the waters of Pearl Harbor, and now who wishes all day long that his wife was still alive to hold him when the nightmares come. He or she is an ordinary and yet extraordinary human being. He or she is a person who offered some of their most vital years in the service of their country. He or she is a person who sacrificed their ambitions so that others would have to not have to sacrifice theirs. They were the sword against the darkness and remain the finest testimony on behalf of the finest, greatest nation ever known. Won't you please stand and join Jan Hunter Doss, accompanied by the 34th Army Band, and proudly sing our national anthem, and we'll follow with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Whose bright stripes and
Father Stephen Page of St. Mary's Catholic Church here in Fairfield will now give the invocation.
If you're able to stand for our prayer, please do so. Today we gather to remember with gratitude and thanksgiving all who have made the supreme sacrifice for our country, for all who desire and work for lasting freedom and justice for all. We begin by pausing in silence to remember why we are here, those who are not here, those unable to be here, as well as each of our concerns. Gathering all our individual prayers, we pray as one. Loving Father, God of mercies and all people, we gather this November 11th, Armistice Day, Remembrance Day, Veterans Day. We gather with our lives full of memories of loved ones, family members, friends, neighbors who have served our country, and those who have no one to defend them. We remember those who have served in the armed services in the great wars of the past century, as well as those who serve here, as well as far and wide. We especially remember those in Afghanistan and Iraq and other troubled parts of our world. We remember not lightly those who fell in battle, those who died keeping the peace, those who, while they did not die, have offered their bodies, their minds, their hearts, their energies to make not only a better country, but a more safe and humane and just world. And so we ask you, Lord of creation, that you daily grace us with meaning and purpose, discernment and conviction, knowing not only your will, but also experiencing your presence, so that those who have pain, those who mourn, those who are anxious, might also find peace and fulfillment. Bless this gathering, bless us with understanding of the sacrifices made, so that we are more grateful and appreciative citizens. Bless those who lead us, guide us, teach us, protect us, give them wisdom, courage, and love. Bless all who sacrifice their self-interest and livelihood for the benefit of the many and the common good, especially those who have sacrificed their very lives for freedom, liberty, justice for all. We offer this prayer to you, God, in the name of our Redeemer, who came among us from on high to live, to serve, to suffer and die, to rise in freedom from death, who brought eternal life to all who hope and believe Jesus the Christ forever and ever. Amen.
We will now have the pleasure of being entertained again by the 34th Army Band, commanded and conducted by Chief Warrant Officer Jim Goodwin. The title is Lest We Forget by James Swearingen. For more than 50 years, American Legion Post number 47 has sponsored Fairfield High School students to attend Hawkeye Boys State Camp at Camp Dodge in Des Moines. Boys State is a program that allows student leaders to experience the workings of government at state and local levels. Brandon Gray was one of these students chosen in 2005. Brandon is a senior this fall at Fairfield High School and is involved in band, cross-country track, pep band, YMCA swim team, and will be a co-captain on the tennis team this year. He plans on attending Iowa State and majoring in aerospace engineering. Here to tell us about his experiences at Boys State is Brandon Gray. Brandon?
Good morning. My name is Brandon Gray, and I'm one of the seniors that was selected to attend Hawkeye Boys State last summer. Before I begin to elaborate on my experiences at Boys State, I would like to give a round of applause for all of our veterans. Being chosen for Boys State is a great honor, and I would also like to thank the American Legion Post here in Fairfield that helped to send us there. As we quickly found out at Boys State, each and every one of the boys selected was very special. Everyone there was a leader in their school, scholarly student, and a great friend. We were working with the best that Iowa had to offer, and the experience that we got out of it is one that I will never forget. Hawkeye Boys State was initially created to promote patriotism in America's youth during the World War II times. And it's a week-long program that educates juniors in high school the workings of government at the state, local, and county levels. And it also shows how these functions are interrelated within all three levels of government in Iowa. Along with this, we each gained a great respect for the political process and all the hard work that our politicians do to keep our country running smoothly. Boys State is broken up into two political parties, the Nationalists and the Federalists. From there, the state as a whole is broken down into individual counties, and from there it's broken down into cities. Each person has the opportunity to run for a position of their choosing, whether it be a governor position at the state level or a local position such as the mayor. I was selected as one of the representatives to the State House. There we learned many things about the workings of government between the House and the Senate. We learned about the committees and how laws are created. We also learned how the House and the Senate are codependent on each other. I gained much insight into the workings of our government at many levels. Most importantly, I learned how fortunate that we are to be able to do these things in the first place. I often hear the phrase, freedom isn't free, and it couldn't be truer than in today's world. With the increasing threat of terrorism and other foreign powers, the cost of freedom is indeed great. Our soldiers have always been willing to do whatever is necessary to defend our great nation, and for that I thank them. Without their dedication, we wouldn't even know the freedoms that we so often take for granted. Whether you're for or against the wars this country has fought, I urge you today to thank our veterans for serving their country without complaint and without hesitation. Thank you all for coming today. God bless you, and God bless America.
Thank you, Brandon. Our next speaker also attended Boys State. Vinny Sharp is active in music as he is a percussionist in all the bands here at the high school. He is a holder of a #1 rating for his solo at state contest and has performed with the Iowa Ambassadors music program touring Europe this past summer. He is an avid bicyclist and will be a co-captain of the tennis team also this spring. He is a member of the Interact Rotary Club and has been on the FHS Honor Roll the past 3 years and is now a member of the National Honor Society. Vinny, how about relating your experiences at Boys State to us? I understand you were the drummer there also.
First of all, I would like to thank the Fairfield American Legion and my teachers here at Fairfield High School for selecting me as one of the Boys State representatives. I appreciate being sponsored for this honor very much. I had a very rewarding week last June when I went to Boys State at Camp Dodge here in Iowa. My first impression at Boys State was one of being overwhelmed, yet also excited about being there. I remember getting out of the car and seeing the barracks all lined up along the road and other teenage boys like myself carrying their suitcases and saying goodbye to their family members. Looking around, I saw old tanks and helicopters sitting on the grounds and men and women in army fatigues walking around. I knew only 2 other boys there amongst the 700 plus that were there. I also brought my snare drum with me so I could play in the Boys State Band. Soon I was attending meetings that consisted of learning about the United States government. We learned about how to be responsible citizens that week by participating in elections and learning how to solve problems through teamwork. I also enjoyed playing my snare drum with the Boys State Band as we performed concerts each night. The highlight was playing America the Beautiful and various marches at the Iowa State Capitol on our last day. I remember thinking to myself that week how wonderful it is to live in a country where we have the freedom to participate in our democratic government. I had a chance at Boys State to learn more about our American government, and I have a newfound appreciation and respect for our democratic way of life. Today, on Veterans Day, is a day to remember the very brave and courageous men and women who fought and are still fighting to protect our country and the freedoms we have today, and to uphold the ideals of our democratic society. On October 26, 1963, President John F. Kennedy said, "The nation reveals itself not only by the men it produces, but also by the men it honors, the men it remembers." Today we honor and remember our veterans for their unselfish and untiring devotion to preserve and protect the freedoms that we are so fortunate to have in our lives here in America. God bless our soldiers, and God bless America.
Isn't it wonderful to see 2 young people like this growing up in the community? And you hear so many bad things about the young generation today. It's not all lost. There's people like this. Our keynote speaker this morning is Lieutenant Colonel Todd Jacobus. Colonel Jacobus was born and raised in Des Moines, graduating from Hoover High School in 1985. He enlisted in the 974th Personnel Services Company, United States Army Reserve in Des Moines in March of 1984, and then transferred to the Iowa Army National Guard in March of 1987. The colonel has attended many Army schools and held various and many important assignments in the Iowa National Guard. The one we will remember the most is that he was the battalion commander of the 224th Combat Engineer Battalion from March 2004 through May 2006. This command tour included a deployment in support of the 1st and 2nd Marine Divisions in the Al-Anbar province of Iraq, where Lieutenant Colonel Jacobus and his soldiers were responsible for route clearance and convoy security operations in Multinational Forces West, headquartered out of Ramadi. And we all know what a dangerous situation that is. He is the recipient of numerous decorations and awards to include the Bronze Star, the Meritorious Service Medal with 1 oak leaf cluster, the Army Commendation Medal with 4 oak leaf clusters, the Army Achievement Medal with 2 oak leaf clusters, the Iraq Campaign Medal, the Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, the Humanitarian Service Medal, the Military Outstanding Volunteer Service Medal, the Iowa Humanitarian Service Ribbon, and the Combat Action Badge. Lieutenant Colonel Jacobus is a member of numerous military and professional associations, as well as the American Legion Post 728, Veteran of Foreign War Post 9127, the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, the Masonic Lodge of Iowa, and the Boy Scouts of America. He is married to the former Heather Brown of Urbandale, Iowa, and they have 4 children, Dalton, Niall, Cameron, and Olivia, and they reside in Des Moines. Colonel Jacobus currently serves as the Recruiting and Retention Commander for the Iowa Army National Guard. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm Fairfield welcome for Lieutenant Colonel Todd Jacobus.
Thank you very much, First Sergeant, for such a great introduction. I very much appreciate that. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to represent veterans at this very special occasion this morning. I express my deepest appreciation to the veterans service organizations that worked with the community leadership in Fairfield High School in carrying on a great tradition here and recognizing veterans of this community. Please allow me to briefly review a little bit of history about Veterans Day. It was started in 1919, November 11th, following World War I, and was known as Armistice Day, a day to recognize the veterans of the war that we hoped would end all wars, which we know now as World War I, started by Woodrow Wilson, President of the United States at the time. Throughout the next several years, it was modified a little bit here and there until 1954, when President Eisenhower, former Supreme Allied Commander for European and North African Theater of Operations, established Veterans Day as a day to remember veterans and recognize veterans of all services, of all conflicts this country has endured. This is a day where Americans pause and recognize the contributions and sacrifice of those who have served our country in uniform. And Fairfield, Iowa has a reputation of recognizing her veterans as well or better than anyone. I look out and I see so many familiar faces, and I think about back to the first time where I had ever even heard the name of the city of Fairfield, Iowa. And that is in 1983, when I was a student, a sophomore at Des Moines Hoover High School. And our girls basketball team in the spring of that year had an outstanding basketball team. Had a couple losses within the Metro Conference, but otherwise, outside of those two losses, were undefeated in playing basketball that year. Then came the state tournament, and we won our first few games there and get ready to play against a little place called Fairfield, Iowa, in the championship game. We knew that it was a lock-in as a state champion, even though that year Fairfield High School was ranked #1 in the state and was undefeated. And the reason that we knew that it was going to be a lock-in championship was because it was Fairfield, Iowa, this small city that a lot of the kids that I went to school with had not heard of before, and we had soundly defeated some very, very good basketball teams. There was no way that these guys could even stand a chance against this great basketball team. Upon entering Veterans Memorial Auditorium in 1983, in the spring of that year, a very cold day, we saw a sea of orange flooding Veterans Memorial Auditorium. Keeping in mind that the high school I went was green and gold, and there were just as many folks in orange as there was in green and gold, which struck me immediately because I thought this Veterans Auditorium is 2 miles from our high school, and these folks drove all this way and filled Vets Auditorium for this game. And as the game, even as the warm-ups started, you could see in this girls' basketball team from Fairfield, Iowa, this fire in their eyes, this determination that they were going to win this game. And it was immediate. We were on our heels to begin with. And at the end of the game, I'm telling you, I've never seen a more tenacious defense than was performed by this team from Fairfield, Iowa, which soundly defeated our girls from Hoover High School in 1983 for the state championship. 5 years later, I joined the 224th Engineer Battalion and began to know a little bit more about Fairfield, Iowa. What I came to know was that this is an outstanding community. I came to know that it is the home of the Lawsons, a family that has been recognized by this community on more than one occasion and includes 3 brothers, all of whom have served at senior officer levels within our military, one of whom served as the Deputy Commander-in-Chief of the United States European Command, and one that served as the Adjutant General of Iowa. This family has certainly made a significant contribution to our state and nation. I came to know people here like Lane Bush, Jim Saltz, Charlie Ruby, and Don Samuelson, men on whom you can depend for support no matter what. I met people like Bob Phipps, who served as our employer support in the Guard and Reserve, and who introduced me to many people throughout this wonderful community. I met people like Chief Warrant Officer Prill, the band director at this school for many years, who was instrumental in establishing an incredible reputation for this community while commanding the 34th Army Band. And obviously that tradition continues today, as you've heard and have heard for many years. I met people like Vicki Tillis, who works for the Fairfield Ledger and who supported the 224th Engineer Battalion in so many ways. Her willingness to take the time to write articles about our soldiers in a very caring manner is appreciated more than you can know. There are so many wonderful people in this community. It was after taking command of the 224th Engineer Battalion in April of 2004 that I gained even more of an appreciation for the wonderful people who make up this community. This community was absolutely supportive of us while we prepared for our mobilization. The send-off ceremony for headquarters and headquarters company, which took place at this very high school on October 14th, which is a Thursday in 2004, was absolutely extraordinary. And it was truly inspirational to have the community support our soldiers in such a positive manner. The lunch at the American Legion post, the VFW post here, likewise was outstanding as we prepared to leave. But the Welcome Homes program on December 17th, Saturday, in 2005, less than a year ago, after a 15-month deployment, was absolutely incredible. We saw the first signs that we were being welcomed home by a grateful community at the Missouri border with Iowa. And signs lined Highway 34 all the way into town. We were greeted by a brave group of motorcycle riders who endured the cold weather to escort us all the way here to the high school. The people who lined the streets, the law enforcement and fire department communities that escorted us here, everyone made the Welcome Home program so special. It was then that I truly, truly realized what a very special community this community is to me and to my family. This is a community who knows and understands service to the state and service to our nation. With a little research, I found out how deep those military roots in the Fairfield and Jefferson County area are. The 3rd Regiment, the 2nd Brigade, 1st Division, had its first formation in Fairfield, Iowa on September 27th of 1840. Very interesting, seeing as to how our state was recognized into statehood in 1846, 6 years later. We can say that the militia here in Jefferson County predates even our state. Between 1840 and 1861, there were many, many military units that were recognized within Jefferson County. These included the Jefferson Guards, the Black Hawk Home Guards, the Penn Township Home Guards, the Locust Grove Township Guards, the Fairfield Guards, the Fairfield Cavalry, the Walnut Township Home Guards, the Saline Home Guards, the Salina Guards, the Coalport Home Guards, the Prairie Home Guards, the Glasgow Home Guards, the Libertyville Home Guards. As far back as the 1890s, Fairfield was recognized for its superb performance in range competitions. And if you know the 34th Army Band, you'll know that they defeat every combat organization within the state of Iowa annually in its rifle competition. So that history that was started way back in the 1890s continues to this day under the leadership of some great soldiers here in the 34th Army Band. The soldiers of this battalion, the 224th Engineer Battalion, not only mobilized and deployed in support of the global war on terrorism. These soldiers set standards for which this community should be quite proud. Following our deployment, Representative John Whitaker of Hillsborough contacted me and told me he and other legislators from southeast Iowa wanted to sponsor a resolution at the State House to honor the 224th Engineer Battalion. After getting statistics from the battalion staff, they finalized that resolution. And I would like to allow you the honor of me reading that resolution this morning. It's House Resolution number 164, and those that sponsored it are Whitaker, Wise, Heston, Greiner, Gaskill, Sands, Cahoon, Swain, DeBoeuf, Miller, Thomas, Hutter, Taylor, Watts, Bodler, Shomshore, Reesner, Dolchek, Kurtenwalk, Dandekar, Bull, Heddens, Granzow, Struck, Lucan, Reichart, Hoosman, Hunter, Pettengill, Tymason, Berry, Eichhorn, Krezig, David, Murphy, Olson, Butka, Peterson, Jacoby, and Turkis. That resolution is a resolution to honor the 224th Combat Engineer Battalion of the Iowa National Guard for its service and sacrifice in the Iraq War. Whereas the 224th Combat Engineer Battalion of the Iowa National Guard is based in Fairfield and has units in Burlington, Keokuk, Mount Pleasant, and Ottumwa. And whereas about 500 soldiers of this battalion returned to Iowa after a year on duty in Iraq. Whereas to that date, the 224th was the largest contingent from Iowa which has returned from Iraq. Whereas the work of the 224th was long, hard, and dangerous, including finding and disarming improvised explosive devices, while conducting combat operations in support of the 1st Marine Division 2nd Marine Division, and other Army and Marine organizations in the Al-Anbar province of Iraq. Whereas that deadly work resulted in locating over 500 of these deadly devices, saving countless lives and earning the 224th the respect and gratitude of soldiers throughout Iraq. And during that service, 4 soldiers from the 224th were killed, and 37 soldiers were recognized with Purple Hearts. Whereas the 224th Combat Engineer Battalion conducted combat operations in the Al-Anbar province of Iraq until December 2nd, 2005, having supported the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force, the 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force, the 1st Marine Division, the 2nd Marine Division, the United States Marine Corps' Regimental Combat Teams 1, 2, 7, and 8, the 11th and 13th Marine Expeditionary Units, the 2nd Brigade Combat Team 2nd Infantry Division, the 2nd Brigade Combat Team 28th Infantry Division, the 155th Brigade Combat Team, and more than 35 maneuver battalions and task forces in 2005. Whereas soldiers of the 224th cleared over 500 improvised devices from over 16,000 kilometers of roadways between March 15th and November 29th. Whereas these explosive devices ranged in size from a surface-laid 122 millimeter round up to the size of a refrigerator buried beneath the surface of a road. And whereas Company C of Mount Pleasant and Keokuk cleared the most distance operating in support of the Regimental Combat Teams 1, 2, 7, and 8 in Fallujah, Hit, Haditha, Al-Qaim, Qusayba, Arutba, and many other areas in the western areas of the province, spending weeks working out of base camps and forward operating bases in these areas of operation. Whereas Company A and B of Burlington and Tumwater, respectively, conducted route clearance operations primarily in Ramadi, the capital of the province. The convoy security escort teams, which are comprised of soldiers and Marines of Company A, Company B, Battery B, 2nd Battalion, 11th Marines, and Company C, 4th Tank Battalion, traveled over 900,000 miles throughout the country of Iraq, providing security, combat support, and combat service support units, as well as civilian contractors, as they delivered the sustainment items to the camps and forward operating bases throughout Iraq. Whereas the battalion was headquartered at Camp Ramadi, a former Iraqi Republican Guard installation on the western outskirts of Ramadi, where they were engaged by indirect fire over 219 times between March 1st and November 27th. Now therefore be it resolved by the House of Representatives that the House thanks the soldiers of this battalion of the Iowa Army National Guard for their service in Iraq. Be it therefore resolved that the House of Representatives honors the memory of Sergeant Casey Byers, Sergeant Seth Garceau, 2nd Lieutenant Brian Gienow, and Specialist John Miller, who gave their lives to their country and to the cause of freedom. We, Christopher Grants, Speaker of the House, and Margaret Thompson, Chief Clerk of the House, hereby certify that the above and foregoing resolution was adopted by the House of Representatives of the 81st General Assembly, signed Christopher Rance and Mary Thompson. During this deployment, we operated in around a lot of towns that up to that point I had never heard of before. Places like Anna, Baghdadi, Fallujah, Haditha, Hit, Qusayba, Karma, Kaladia, Qubaseba, Al-Qaim, Ramadi, Rawa, Arutba, Trabil, and Walid. Before preparing for this deployment, these had been spots on a map. Today, these cities and towns and villages throughout western Iraq are very personal to me and to those with whom I served. However, these locations are no different than the names of locations around the globe where veterans, many of whom you see sitting right here with us today, have been engaged against enemies of this country. In the American Revolution, the war which forged our nation, this nation's veterans served in places with names like Lexington, Ticonderoga, Trenton, Bunker Hill, and Yorktown. During the War of 1812, which solidified our independence from Great Britain, this nation's veterans served in places like Baltimore, New Orleans, and Queenston. During the Spanish-American War, veterans of this country served in Cuba. On the bloody battlefields of the Civil War, Americans fought to save the Union and to preserve human dignity while serving in places like Shiloh, Antietam, Fredericksburg, and Chancellorsville. A generation later, American service members were again called and spent to suppress worldwide tyranny. From the trenches of Europe during the Great War, our young men and women fought to preserve democracy in a war we would hope would end all of these wars. That generation of veterans fought in places like Verdun, Amiens, and Marne. World War II, the largest and most violent armed conflict in the history of mankind, saw our veterans serve in places like Alexandria, Tunis, Naples, Rome, Normandy, Iwo Jima, and Luzon. During the conflicts in Korea and Vietnam, our veterans once again served proudly. Korean War veterans fought in places with names like Pusan, Incheon, and Chosin. The Vietnam War veterans fought in places with names like Khe Sanh, Saigon, and Hanoi. In the 90s, this country placed veterans in harm's way again in Southwest Asia to confront a dictator in Iraq. These veterans served in places with names like Kuwait City and Riyadh. And as the new century dawned on this great nation, our men and women once again endeavored to defeat an enemy that challenged our nation, engaging in combat operations in the global war on terrorism, as we all know, in Afghanistan and Iraq. Many of our nation's veterans, however, did not serve in combat. However, anyone who wore the uniform of the United States Armed Forces sacrificed a great deal for all of us. These veterans trained in places like Fort Irwin, California, Camp Ripley, Minnesota, Fort Riley, Kansas, Fort McCoy, Wisconsin, and dozens of training installations and bases, both CONUS and continental United States and outside the United States. These peacetime veterans were the power behind the leadership of this country and played a significant role in maintaining peace. One of the founding fathers of this country, George Washington, said in a very eloquent manner, "It is, if we desire to secure peace, it must be known that we are at all times ready for war." There are so many things for which we here in the United States have to be grateful. We are free to speak our mind. In other areas of the world, speaking your mind is simply not an option. There is a premise that we are all created equal. We have freedom of the press. There are checks and balances within our government. We vote for our leaders, and there is a relatively seamless transition between leaders. These freedoms are among those that make the United States of America such a wonderful place to live. These freedoms are the same freedoms that America's veterans stood in harm's way to defend. It is very hard to put into words the appreciation that I have for being an American. I would ask that you all remember in your thoughts the 1,400,000 soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen that serve our country around the globe right now. I would ask that you remember the 150,000 servicemen and women that are currently engaged in combat operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I would ask that you remember those who served our country in the past, our veterans. Your words of appreciation to them mean more than you could ever know. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. And believe me, none of us will ever forget what you did for the 224th Engineer Battalion. We have a special presentation this morning. It's for our local VFW. And to do the honors, may I present VFW State Vice Commander Donald Roque.
We all just lived through a political campaign, didn't we? A lot of campaign advertising on the radio and the TV and in the newspaper and everywhere. If you looked at those things as the politicians wanted you to, you heard a little bell ringing on each of the special interest groups that was on the politician's side, and you saw a gong clanging in the special interest groups that would oppose him. And that's the way it was designed. What it was not designed to do was to reveal whether the guy or lady in the campaign wanted the job or just a position. What's the difference between the job and the position? Well, the job means they want to get something done. The position means they want the trappings of that. They want the perks and the pay and the nice things that go with it. Here in Fairfield, you have Dimmitt Voorhees Post 2271. They've been around for 75 years. You cannot keep a VFW post going for 75 years by having just the trappings of the VFW. Well, what are the trappings of the VFW? Well, there's a post home, there's a canteen, there's carrying a flag down the street on the 4th of July, there's this celebration here. Those are the trappings of the VFW. What is the work of the VFW? The everyday work of the VFW is serving veterans. And it can't be done 4 or 5 times a year. When you go to the Fairfield High School football games and you see the color guard come out there, that's not a job, that's a trapping. That is a position. It is the day in, day out work that keeps this post going. And I think we can probably rely on some of the punks, drunks, and skunks in the world to make sure that there are additional wars in the future. It'd be nice if there weren't, but those people are out there. And it's going to take veterans, it's going to take young men and women to keep this freedom we have. So for the next 75 years, at least, somebody's going to have to be serving veterans, the day in, day out work. And I would thank you, Dimmitt Voorhees Post 2271, for the work you've done in the past, and I look forward to working with you in the future as long as I can. And now, Sergeant Amanda, if you'd ask your representative to come up here and receive this award. The National Commander-in-Chief of the Veterans of Foreign Wars is a guy that ran for the job. He's not one of those nice, smooth-looking guys. In fact, he's been described as looking like a white oak log with the bark still on. I'll read this. Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States Diamond Jubilee Award presented to Dimmitt Voorhees Post 2271, Fairfield, Iowa, mustered 11/3/1931. In special commemoration and grateful recognition of its 75 years of exceptional service to the nation and its veterans throughout its 7½ decades of dedicated support for the programs and purposes of the Veterans of Foreign Wars. In witness whereof, we have set unto our hands the official seal of the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States this day, 3rd of November 2006, Commander-in-Chief Gary Kirpus, Adjutant General Alan Gunner Kent. Oh, you got to turn around here so that they... Whoop. Things falling all over, it won't look good in the pictures. Congratulations. This day is not about me. This day is, for us, is about Post 2271. Thank you.
I have been a member of this organization since returning from 3 years overseas in 1946, and this is a great honor for me to receive this in honor of the Post 2271. Thank you.
Congratulations, VFW Post. John Henados is going to honor us again and lead us in singing, accompanied by the 34th Army Band, God Bless America.
Please stand if you're able. As we ask God's blessings upon us, we also take time to remember God's blessings we wish on those who have served our country, those present, those unable to be here. So again, we pause in silence to remember all those dear to us, dear to our countries, those who have served us as vets. May the Lord bless us. May the Lord keep us. May God's face shine upon us, strengthen us, and be gracious to us. May God look upon us with kindness and give us blessings and peace forever and ever. Amen.
You can be seated. The American Legion has been conducting Memorial Day and Veterans Day ceremonies in Fairfield for many years. And we appreciate all that they do to help us remember and honor the military veterans of this community and nation. Thank you to the members of the VFW and all volunteers who for years have posted the flags in Central Park for all to see that Fairfield is a community that cares about its veterans. I would also like to recognize the Color Guard of the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the VFW Auxiliary, the AMVETS, the American Legion Post number 47, the American Legion Auxiliary, and the Fairfield Elks Club for posting the colors on the stage today. Certainly a special thanks to all who helped make this ceremony a success. The 34th Army Band, the best of its kind in the land. John Henados, who year in and year out blesses us with her beautiful voice. Father Page, Lane Bush, and Dave Page for their tireless efforts in organizing this ceremony, and of course our speaker, Lieutenant Colonel Todd Jacobus. And to Jim Edgston, Tom Voorhees, Brad Rose, and the entire high school administration for for permitting us to use this auditorium and the help with the sound and the lights and the staging. I would like to remind you all that the annual Veterans Day dinner will be held at the VFW American Legion building at 6 p.m. All veterans, VFW and American Legion, AMVET members, families, and guests are invited. Please bring a covered dish and your own table service, as the VFW and American Legion will provide the meat and drinks. The 34th Army Dance Band, the Rhythm Majors, will provide dance music for a Veterans Day dance at the Fairfield Golf and Country Club beginning at 7:30 this evening. The dance is free to the public and would be a really nice way of celebrating after the dinner at the VFW American Legion building. And number 4 on the announcements, and I just added this today, this Sunday at 6 p.m. or Monday night at 8 p.m. on IPTV is going to be a concert performed by the Veterans Band of Iowa. It's the only one of its kind in the nation. And it's actually a very professional recording of last year's concert. It is in honor to all veterans. And I think it's an hour, maybe just a little bit longer than that. I think it's one you wouldn't want to miss. This concludes our ceremony. And as we have often heard in the military, you are dismissed.